Vincent kicked off the 1980s with a brand new project. He signed on as host of Mystery for PBS television. This was an anthology series featuring crime, suspense, and, naturally, mystery stories. Price was the second host of Mystery, which began in 1980, taking over the reins from film critic Gene Shalit in 1981. The program is fondly remembered for the fantastic animated opening and closing credits, featuring original art from artist Edward Gorey. Price left the show in 1989 due to health problems. Interestingly, his former co-star from Theater of Blood, Diana Rigg, took over the host duties from Vincent. Vincent's first film role of the 1980s was also an anthology, although this time one rooted firmly in the genre of horror, with a 1981 British production, The Monster Club. John Carradine stars as R. Chetwynd Hayes, a writer who is out for a midnight stroll in an English street when he is approached by a beggar played by Vincent Price. Hayes offers money for food, but the man refuses, stating he can never keep food down. Hayes then offers to help in any way he can, at which point the beggar sprouts fangs and attacks. It turns out that Price is actually a vampire named Aramis. He doesn't kill his victim, however, and afterwards learns his donor is none other than famed horror writer R. Chetwynd Hayes. Anxious to pay the man back for the loan of his blood, Aramis takes Chetwynd Hayes to a special club, a monster club, where he schools him on the various types of monsters in the world. Here we are treated to 3 individual horror tales, which are broken up with more interaction between Price and Carradine, as well as musical numbers from various bands that are performing at the club. Of the 3 stories, my favorite is the last one, the Hume Goose story, in which Stuart Whitman plays a movie director who goes out location scouting and gets more than he bargained for from a creepy old village. The film ends with Aramis shocking the fellow members of his club by nominating Chetwynd Hayes for membership into their club. They at first refuse, as he is merely a human, but Aramis proceeds to point out that humans are actually the most horrific beings of all, with their violence, murders, and weapons of mass destruction. The crowd ultimately agrees, breaks into applause, and the band breaks into music once again. The Monster Club was released in the UK in April of 1981. It was directed by Roy Ward Baker, and all the stories are based on works by writer R. Chetwynd Hayes, who John Carradine portrays in the film. Another neat little homage within the film is a character named Linton Busatsky. This is an anagram for longtime Amicus producer Milton Subotsky, who also produces this film. The Monster Club sports an excellent cast featuring, in addition to Price and Carradine, Donald Pleasance, Stuart Whitman, Britt Eklund, Richard Johnson, and Patrick McGee. This was the 7th time Price and Carradine appeared together, including their Horror Hall of Fame TV appearance. 2 years prior to this, Price had played a vampire on the made-for-TV horror anthology Once Upon a Midnight Scary. He also played a vampire on an episode of F Troop called V is for Vampire in 1967. One of the more memorable things about this film is the music. The movie features performances by the bands The Viewers, B.A. Robertson, Night, The Pretty Things, as well as background music from UB40 and others. In addition, there is an unforgettable dance sequence where a stripper performs a routine, stripping not only her clothes but also her skin all the way down to her skeleton. I have to admit I have a real soft spot for the Monster Club. Although it's not one of the best horror anthologies of all time, it's one that I revisit often. The quirky sense of humor and musical numbers more than make up for the ridiculous rubber masks in the nightclub. Price and Carradine are excellent together and the cast is terrific throughout. Overall, this is a fun movie. In 1982, a young Disney animator wrote and directed a stop-motion short film that was a tribute to his childhood hero, Vincent Price. That animator was Tim Burton, and the film was titled simply Vincent. Vincent tells the story of a young boy named Vincent Malloy who has quite the imagination. Obsessed with Vincent Price and Edgar Allan Poe stories, Vincent imagines his world filled with spiders, bats, and all things gruesome. This short film runs right around 6 minutes and is a magnificent tribute to Vincent Price. Best of all, it is narrated by none other than Price himself, making this project a dream come true for Burton, who was just 24 at the time. This remains my favorite film that Tim Burton ever made. Burton and Price became friends during the filming of this movie, and the two would stay in touch through the years. They would go on to work together again in the late 1980s. Vincent's next big screen appearance was the 1983 horror comedy, The House of the Long Shadows. Desi Arnaz Jr. stars as Kenneth McGee, a writer who makes a $20,000 bet with his agent that he can pen a horror novel along the lines of Wuthering Heights in just 24 hours, provided he has the proper setting. His agent Sam, played by Richard Todd, knows of a Gothic manor in Wales that has stood empty for over 40 years and books it for the night. McGee makes his way through a driving rainstorm and finally finds the place, but upon arriving discovers that the house isn't empty after all. He meets a caretaker named Elijah Quimby, played by John Carradine, and his daughter Victoria, played by Sheila Keith, who are very surprised to see him. Shortly thereafter, a woman sneaks into the mansion who is revealed to be Sam's secretary, Mary Norton, played by Julie Peasgood. After that, several more guests arrive in succession. A man named Sebastian, played by Peter Cushing, another named Corrigan, played by Christopher Lee, a pair of hitchhikers named Andrew and Diane Calder, played by Richard Hunter and Louise English, and a final guest named Lionel, played by Vincent Price. Needless to say, things get complicated quickly, and none of the guests are who they seem to be. McGee becomes caught up in the mysterious goings-on in the creepy mansion, which is filled with cobwebs, hidden chambers, forbidden secrets, and murder. House of the Long Shadows was directed by Pete Walker and distributed by Cannon Pictures. It was released in the UK on June 17, 1983, but not until the following year in the US. The end of the film is a twist within a twist, and one that many viewers find disappointing. Ultimately, it's the pairing of the four horror masters, Carradine, Cushing, Price, and Lee, that is the best thing about the film. The four men share not only the same movie, but even the same scene at times, making this the only movie in which they all four appear on screen together. Desi Arnaz is more than overmatched by the experienced old-timers in this movie, but I still find the film entertaining for what it is. There are enough old dark house elements mixed with fun performances by the horror veterans to make this one more than entertaining in my book. A must-see at least once for classic horror fans. Next up, Price would appear in the 1984 horror comedy Bloodbath at the House of Death. On November 30th, 1982, a musical project involving Vincent Price was released, which would go on to become a worldwide sensation. I am, of course, talking about Michael Jackson's Thriller, which would go on to become the best-selling album of all time. Vincent provided a spoken word rap in the break of the title song, Thriller, and it's my personal opinion that he played a large part in the success of that particular song. By this point in his career, Price was a horror icon, and his vocals added a touch of class and spooky fun to the production. The album won 8 Grammys, including Album of the Year. According to Price's daughter Victoria, Thriller became something of a sore spot for Price. He was offered a cut in royalties or a flat fee of $20,000 for his participation. He chose the latter, unfortunately, a decision he regretted when the album became a worldwide success. It was back to Britain for Price for his next picture, a low-budget horror comedy entitled Bloodbath at the House of Death. Dr. Mandeville, played by British comedian Kenny Everett, and Dr. Coyle, played by Pamela Stevenson, are traveling to the mysterious Headstone Manor to conduct a paranormal investigation. After stopping at the local pub for directions, they arrive at the manor and meet up with the rest of their team. It turns out the house has a grisly history, as 9 years earlier, while a businessman's weekend retreat and summer girls' school was being held, it was attacked by a band of robed monks who violently murdered everyone in the home. The scientific research continues while we learn that the robed monks are still afoot, led by the sinister man, played by Vincent Price, their 700-year-old satanic cult leader. And they have a similar fate in store for the most recent occupants of Gravestone Manor. Bloodbath at the House of Death premiered on March 30th, 1984. It was directed by Ray Cameron and is an irreverent horror comedy that spoofs such films as The Haunting, An American Werewolf in London, Alien, Jaws, The Shining, The Exorcist, and more. It predates a similar film, Scary Movie, by 15 years. In fact, one of the gags, where Dr. Coyle has sex with an apparition who loves her and leaves her, is replicated suspiciously closely by Scary Movie 2 in 2001, which also features a paranormal group investigating a haunted mansion. However, the humor doesn't quite work as well in Bloodbath as it does in Scary Movie, with many of the jokes and puns falling flat. Vincent's participation in this one is limited to a couple of scenes with fellow satanic cult members before he is accidentally roasted alive.
No, it's me that's burning, you schmuck.
Bloodbath at the House of Death is quirky and gory and played strictly for laughs, with a risque sense of humor and a plot that makes little sense. Fans of Price will enjoy this one, however, as he's hamming it up and seems generally right at home with a bawdy sense of humor. Also, fans of movies like Scary Movie will enjoy seeing this early entry into the genre. Next up for Price is more voice work on the 1984 animated feature, The Great Mouse Detective. Price next lent his vocal talent to a pair of animated kids projects, the first of which was a Saturday morning cartoon called The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo.
The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo.
In it, Scooby and Shaggy are tricked by a pair of ghosts named Weird and Bogle into opening a sealed magical chest, which releases 13 ancient ghosts. The gang must track down and capture these escaped spooks. They are assisted in their quest by a warlock named Vincent Van Gool, voiced by Price. The 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo was a half-hour program that debuted on September 7, 1985, and ran for one season, although it did see more play in reruns and syndication. This series was interesting in that the gang hunted real ghosts instead of criminals in disguises. It's also interesting because original mystery gang members Fred and Velma were nowhere to be seen in this series. In their place were the annoying Scrappy-Doo and a kid named Flim Flam. The show was canceled after just one season, at which point only 11 of the 13 escaped ghosts had been recaptured. Price was definitely the high point in what was ultimately not one of the better Scooby-Doo series.
Trouble soon will be about. What was that?
Next up, Price again lent his recognizable voice to an animated feature, this time for Walt Disney Studios with The Great Mouse Detective. The story follows the character of Basil of Baker Street, played by Barry Ingram, a famed mouse detective who lives on Baker Street beneath the home of Sherlock Holmes. Basil is hired to solve a kidnapping case. It turns out a famous toy maker named Hiram was kidnapped by a peg-legged bat named Fidget, who is the minion of the villainous Professor Ratigan, played by Vincent Price. Ratigan plans to force Hiram to build a robot that looks just like the Queen so he can replace her and become ruler of Mousedom. It's up to Basil and his assistant, Dr. Dawson, to stop him. Ratigan meets his end in this one by falling to his death from the Big Ben clock in London, making this another of the many films in which Price's character meets a violent end. The Great Mouse Detective hit the big screens on July 2nd, 1986. It was based on a kid's book called Basil of Baker Street by Eve Titus. The film was both a critical and box office success, with much of the praise aimed Vincent and Ratigan's way. Price was exquisite as the ruthless Ratigan, and thus the villain steals the show in this one. Price claimed this was one of his favorite roles, and it shows in his performance. He is charming and energetic and even gets a chance to sing two songs, The World's Greatest Criminal and Goodbye So Soon. Next up for Price is back to horror movies with a pair of 80s horror anthology films. Next up for Price was a pair of horror anthology films, the first of which was the shot-on-video feature Escapes in 1986. The film opens with Price playing the part of a mailman, leaving a package in a mailbox. A young man named Matt comes home shortly after and opens the package, discovering a videotape inside. He notices Vincent Price's name on the box and decides to give it a go. He pops it into his top-loader VCR, and Vincent Price appears on screen in suit and tie to introduce 5 separate horror stories. He claims at the beginning of the tape that there will be 6 stories, but the final one turns out to be a bit unique, as Price speaks directly to Matt, informing him that he is the star of the final feature.
It is this thought that brings us to our 6th story. This particular story is unique in that we have decided to have you, Matthew Wilson, participate.
What?
This film was written and directed by David Steensland. This was Steensland's first and only movie, and how he got Price to appear in this one is a mystery. Each of these stories were originally produced as standalone short films that aired on cable television. Director Steensland gathered them together for this film and convinced Price to shoot the wraparound scenes linking them together. The stories are a bit lackluster, some better than others naturally, but the wraparound storyline is actually pretty clever, and it's safe to say that Price's involvement is the main draw in this film, making it worthwhile for Vincent Price fans at least once. Vincent next appeared in another horror anthology in 1987 titled From a Whisper to a Scream, a.k.a. The Offspring. From a Whisper to a Scream takes place in the town of Oldfield, Tennessee. Price stars as town historian Julian White, who relates the history of the town to a reporter, played by Susan Tyrrell, through 4 stories ranging in theme from necrophilia to voodoo and black magic. At the conclusion of the stories, it's revealed that the reporter actually has a personal reason for her interest in the town of Oldfield, and she's actually come to kill Julian.
To say thank you in my own special way.
From a Whisper to a Scream was written, produced, and directed by Jeff Burr. It features an interesting cast that includes, besides Price, Clu Gulager, Terry Kaiser, Rosalind Cash, and Cameron Mitchell. It features some rather darker material and is a bit of a low-budget picture, so it may not be everyone's cup of tea. But it's definitely still worth watching, a pretty good anthology overall, and Price is in it, so you can't go wrong there. Next up for Price was the 1987 drama, The Whales of August. In 1987, Vincent Price began a new venture, hosting a TV series for the Walt Disney Corporation called Read, Write, and Draw. The show consisted of short episodes, 3 to 5 minutes long, geared strictly for children. The setup was simple. The Disney Channel magazine would publish a short, 1-page story in the magazine and ask children to write an ending for it, accompanied by a drawing. Price would then read one lucky kid's story on the air and show their art. The show aired on the Disney Channel from January 1987 through fall 1988. Vincent's next big screen appearance was the 1987 drama, The Whales of August. The film tells the story of 2 widowed sisters, played by Lillian Gish and Betty Davis. They have returned to a summer cottage on the coast of Maine, where their family has vacationed since childhood to watch for whales off the coast. The elder sister Libby, played by Betty Davis, is blind, and her sister Sarah, played by Lillian Gish, cares for her. The 2 women reminisce about old times and their relationship, and ponder whether to install a new picture window in the cottage. Ann Southern plays a family friend named Tish, who visits the ladies often. Vincent Price plays a local fisherman named Mr. Marinoff, who also visits the sisters one evening. He joins them for a birthday dinner and hints at needing a place to stay, as his landlord has died, but the gruff Libby rebukes him and he departs that evening.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Marinoff.
Oh, you needn't be, my dear. I have often been adrift, but I have always stayed afloat.
And that is just about it. The movie is a quiet one and is really more about the sisters' relationship than anything else. It was directed by Lindsay Anderson and based on a play of the same name by David Barry. There's a couple of interesting connections in this one. The executive producer for Wells of August was Shep Gordon, longtime manager for Alice Cooper, making this another project for Vincent that had an Alice Cooper tie. The music was by Alan Price, no relation to Vincent, who was the original keyboardist for the group The Animals. And finally, Vincent Price and Bette Davis had worked together previously on the 1939 film The Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex, making this a reunion of sorts for the two actors, who were old friends. Vincent had even appeared on a celebrity roast honoring Davis a decade earlier in 1973.
You know, Betty has always suffered in every picture she has ever made. When I appeared with her in Elizabeth and Essex, she gave up her beauty. In Dark Victory, she gave up her eyesight. And in The Virgin Queen, she gave up her hobby.
Next up for Price would be the 1988 zombie film, Dead Heat. It was back to the horror genre for Vincent Price in his next big screen appearance, the 1988 horror comedy, Dead Heat. A pair of Los Angeles detectives named Roger Mortis, played by Treat Williams, and Doug Bigelow, played by Joe Piscopo, stumble across a ring of rather unusual criminals. They're already dead. After a shootout with these near invincible thugs, a coroner informs the pair that they have already had autopsies, as proven by their scars. They're zombies. A strange chemical is found in the men's bodies, and Mortis and Bigelow track the chemical to the Dante Pharmaceutical Corporation, run by Dr. Ernest McNabb, played by Darren McGavin. Detective Bigelow slips away to snoop around the factory alone and discovers a machine that resurrects the dead. Unfortunately, there is already a resurrected subject on the table, an undead biker with a nasty disposition. They get into a fight, and in the scuffle, Detective Mortis is knocked into an air compression chamber and killed. Detective Bigelow and the coroner, played by Claire Kirkconnell, place Mortis onto the resurrection machine and activate it, returning him to life. However, he quickly begins to decompose, and we learn that he only has 12 hours left to track down and expose the criminal ring before he dissolves into a pile of ooze. They eventually expose the mastermind behind the undead deeds, millionaire Arthur P. Loudermilk, played by Vincent Price. Dead Heat was directed by Mark Goldblatt, whose only other film credit is the 1989 film Punisher from Marvel Comics. Goldblatt is best known as a film editor, working on a number of genre favorites, including Piranha, The Howling, Terminator 1 and 2, Halloween 2, and many more. This film is fun but goofy, full of gory 80s special effects. The main draw for me was seeing Vincent Price and Darren McGavin in a film together, and fortunately they get to share a scene late in the movie. Price is not in the movie much, however, appearing in the final 5 minutes or so and very briefly early in a videotape scene. McGavin has much more to do in the movie and is terrific in it. You know, I enjoyed this film for what it was. Price, McGavin, the wacky plot, and fantastic special effects all combined to make this a worthy watch for horror fans, in my opinion. After Dead Heat, Vincent next appeared in the 1990 crime drama Catchfire, a.k.a. Backtrack.
With me on Art Flash is an artist who has stirred controversy with her work using...
Catchfire is directed by Dennis Hopper, who also stars in it opposite Jodie Foster. Foster plays artist Annie Benton, whose car breaks down one evening on the highway. On her way walking to a gas station, she accidentally witnesses a mafia hit. The police place her in witness protection, and she relocates under an assumed name across the country. The mob boss, Mr. Avoca, played by Vincent Price, sends a hitman named Milo, played by Dennis Hopper, to track her down and kill her. He eventually does find her, but doesn't kill her. As it turns out, he's fallen in love with her. He kidnaps her in hopes that she'll fall in love with him too. Catchfire was released April 3, 1990. Hopper's original version was 3 hours long, but the studio edited the film to a standard 90-minute runtime without his input, and Hopper furiously took his name off the film, with the director's credit initially reading Alan Smithee. He later recut it to a 2-hour version and released it to cable television under the title Backtrack. The film is packed with appearances and cameos from numerous stars including Charlie Sheen, Joe Pesci, Dean Stockwell, Julie Adams, and even Bob Dylan. Vincent is only in a few scenes and has very little to do in this odd little film. Vincent's final big screen appearance was another 1990 film, Edward Scissorhands. This fairy tale style story stars Johnny Depp as a boy named Edward Scissorhands, who was created, much like Pinocchio, by an elderly inventor played by Vincent Price. The inventor, unfortunately, has a heart attack and dies before completing his creation, unable to add the final piece, his hands. In place of hands, Edward has scissors and tries to survive and fit into a society that sees him as a monster. Edward Scissorhands was released December 6, 1990 and was Vincent's last big screen appearance. It stars Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder and received both box office and critical acclaim. The film reunited Price with director Tim Burton, whom he had worked with on the animated short film Vincent in 1982. It has become a fan favorite among Price fans and is a touching send-off to Price's film career. Vincent's health had begun to decline in the 1980s, as was evidenced by the declining number of film roles he accepted. In 1989, health issues forced him to step down as host of Mystery on PBS. His wife Coral Brown was diagnosed with cancer and battled the disease off and on throughout the late 1980s. On May 29, 1991, she succumbed to breast cancer at the age of 77. They had been married for 17 years. Vincent's final acting role was the 1992 made-for-TV film, The Heart of Justice. This is a murder mystery starring Eric Stoltz and Jennifer Connelly. Price has 2 extremely short scenes in it, both conversation scenes at a restaurant table. Vincent's health continued to decline, but he had a terrific group of friends, caretakers, and family to make his final days as comfortable as possible. Vincent passed away on October 25, 1993, from complications due to emphysema and Parkinson's disease. He was 82 years old. His body was cremated and his ashes scattered at sea a few miles off the coast of Santa Monica. One final film in which Price lent his talents surfaced a couple of years after his death, The Thief and the Cobbler. This was an animated film by famed animator Richard Williams, a fantasy picture in which Price voiced the evil Grand Vizier Zigzag. The roots of this film stretch back to the 1960s, and Price recorded his part sometime in the early 1970s. The film was never finished, but in 1995, the studio released a heavily edited version of what would have been Williams's grand opus. Another cut was later cobbled together from a work print that is closer to Williams' vision. Vincent had an amazing career that spanned not just the fields of film and television, which he is best remembered for, but also theater, radio, art, books, cooking, music, and much more. He always said, "A man who limits his interests limits his life," and his was a life without limits. He was an extremely prolific artist, preferring to be busy, and in the process became a household name and gained a legion of loyal fans who continue to sing his praises decades later. Thank you all for joining me for this series, The Fantastic Films of Vincent Price. This has been quite a journey. I've had a lot of fun doing this. You know, when I started this series, I was initially only going to cover the horror, fantasy, and science fiction films of Vincent Price, thus the name Fantastic Films. But I knew I wanted to watch every Vincent Price movie. That was the whole reason for doing this. And I eventually decided shortly before shooting that if I was going to do that, I might as well take viewers along on the journey with me. And that's what I've tried to do, making a video for every film that was theatrically released by Vincent Price, as well as a number of other fun projects along the way. I'll leave a link at the end of this for the playlist so you guys can find all of them together in one spot. I would also like to say thank you to everybody who helped me gather materials for this, who donated movies, copies of Vincent Price films for me to watch, and graciously donated articles from their own collections. I appreciate each and every one of you. And in closing, I would like to say that this whole film series has been dedicated, and I would like to dedicate it to the one and only Vincent Price. Thank you for the hours of endless entertainment through the years and the fantastic films you left behind.